Good evening, everyone. It is an honor and a privilege to be able to interview our speaker for this evening, Ann Terrell. She is the immediate past president of the NAEYC Governing Board, as well as the author of the book Graceful Leadership in Early Childhood Education, which I was able to read and really was able to grab a lot of nuggets and encouragement in my early childhood leadership journey. So we're just going to have a conversation and welcome, Anne. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to spend some time with us.
Thank you for the invitation. I look forward to the conversation this evening. And again, I just want to uplift and thank you all for the work that you're doing. I am so impressed with the on-the-ground work that you all are doing, your commitment, your real commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. It is outstanding. And like I haven't seen very many affiliates do. And so it is my honor to be here with you all this evening.
Thank you. So who or what inspired you to go into the early childhood field?
You've read the book, so you know there's this history of education in my family, not necessarily early childhood education. My grandmother was a pioneer in our small town in Kentucky in education. She was the first Black teacher in the all-white school system. They didn't make her permanent. She was a long-term sub. But then my mom, while she did not go into teaching, she was a very strong supporter of education. And she was on, when Title I passed, she was on the first Title I committee here in Milwaukee. And she supported the other parents. I had the opportunity to meet one of her peers that were also on the committee, and she said, your mom would interpret all of those federal rules and regulations, and she would empower us, and she would tell us what our rights were and what our responsibilities were. And so while she wasn't a teacher, she was, right? She wasn't in the classroom, but she was. And so they obviously are too strong, and both of them have passed, staunch supporters of education. But again, there have been so many women and men in my life that, or in my career, that have prompted me and encouraged me and supported me. And I'm a very spiritual person, and I believe that my ancestors are guiding my steps. And I just believe that this is some kind of divine destiny for me to be in this place, to be with you all again here today, and to have worked in the field of early childhood education. I think I'm following a path of destiny.
Mm-hmm. So can you describe for us your path into early childhood leadership?
Ooh, that's a long journey. It's next April, it will be 50 years in this field. And I started out as an assistant teacher in an infant toddler classroom. Now, there's a story behind this. I've been in this field long enough to where infants and toddlers, or children under 2, weren't authorized to go into childcare programs in the state of Wisconsin until like 1974.
Wow.
And I was one of their first teachers in a toddler. I was an assistant teacher in a toddler room. And I was really very fortunate to have a director of our center that, again, saw something in me that perhaps I didn't see in myself. And she encouraged me and made these opportunities available for me to get professional development all along my career. And so started out as an assistant teacher in an infant toddler room, and went on to become a lead teacher. And then uh, a director and lead teacher of a very small church-run program for a while, and then the director of childcare at um, a Catholic church, a Catholic school, and that had a childcare center attached to it. And after that, became the center director for a program, and then had the wonderful opportunity to become a licensing specialist. One of the women who would become a mentor for me was the chief of child care licensing. And she came to me one day and she said, I have a position. It's a project position. It's only 6 months. I can't guarantee anything after 6 months. But she said, none of the licensing specialists have a background in early childhood. And if you would take she could make an appointment. She said, if you would take on this position, I'll try to make it permanent, but I can't guarantee anything. And so I was really very fortunate to have her as a mentor, and another woman who wrote all of the child care licensing rules for Wisconsin. I sat in between them in this role and learned so much from them. And when I had learned enough from them, that when the position became available and I took the test, it was an opening statewide, so I had to test into it. I think my score was like 99.7 or something like that, and the position became permanent. And so I was the first licensing specialist here in Wisconsin to have a primary caseload of family child care, because nobody at that time wanted it. The other licensing specialists didn't either see value in it or thought it was too much work. But that became my caseload. And so I had a caseload. It started out as I think 27 family child care centers and one group center. And the other licensing specialists had primarily group centers with one family child care center in their caseload. By the time I left that position was 4 years later. And I left that position because it was taxing. I found myself, how do I put this? I found myself not being able to give the technical assistance and support that I wanted to provide. I was doing criminal background checks. I found myself in the police department. I just, it wasn't for me. I found that it wasn't for me. And a position became available at our local technical college. They were looking for someone to run their on-campus child care center, but also oversee the new construction. They were building a new health services building, and our child care center was going to be located on the first floor, one of the located in the first floor of that. So left child care licensing, became the director of the on-campus child care center, and did that for 4 years. And left that position to become the executive director of a program that had only been run by nuns. I was the first lay person to direct that program, and was responsible for moving that program out of the building that used to be an orphanage. It was dark, it was dingy, it was horrible. And we purchased, the city allowed us to purchase an old school building that was 2 blocks away for $1. And so we purchased that building and renovated it, and it became like a state-of-the-art childcare program. And I did that for 4 years, and then had the opportunity to become the director of our NACE affiliate of WICA. And that was just a wonderful opportunity, because WICA was on the cusp of becoming financially stable that it is right now. And so What did I do after week? I was recruited. After that, I was recruited by our local school system to come and be part of their early childhood team. And that was my last position in early childhood. I became the coordinator, the executive director of early childhood for the school district. I was trying to retire when our new superintendent came in and said, well, Ann, I need you to reinvigorate, reestablish the MPS Foundation. It had been laying dormant for like 8 years. Mm-hmm. And she said, we need some funds. And so I did that for 2 years, reestablished the foundation, recruited a new board of directors, raised $2 million, and then stepped out. That was 2018. And since that time, I've been volunteering, doing some adjunct faculty work periodically, and most of it is volunteer work. So that's my 50-year journey. I'm smiling because, Elisa, I see you. I see your name on the screen, and it just made me smile, and I hope you're doing well. So that's my colleague from NACE from the board the first time around.
I heard a common trend or that kept coming up in your leadership journey is that you are considered like a transformational leader, a change agent. Like you were blessed to be able to see the fruits of your labor while you were there. So that is awesome. While some people are in roles forever, and maybe they may not even be able to see the quote unquote promised land, but they have laid the groundwork, but you've been blessed to be able to see the fruits of your labor.
Yeah, it can't be about us, right? Mm-hmm. It can't be about us and the position. We've got to be able to lay the foundation for what we hope is a better tomorrow for the children and families that we serve, and for our staff members, the people that we work with on a daily basis, those frontline workers. We've got to be able to appreciate them, lift them up, support them. And one of the things that I'm, again, most pleased about is that I've been able to mentor. We lift as we climb. And I've been able to mentor some women and some men, but who are now leaders of programs, principals, and doing really fantastic work in the community, statewide and nationally. Again, we've got to be able to leave. It can't be just leading. We've got to learn how to follow, but we've got to learn how to bring others along with us as well.
Mm-hmm. So you wrote a book called Graceful Leadership in Early Childhood Education. How would you give us some cliff notes of what graceful leadership is?
Typically when we think about leadership, we don't see ourselves in that role. Typically, when we think about leadership, we think about this very aggressive, dominating kind of, tall, chiseled jaw kind of approach to
my
leadership.
Way or the highway.
Right. Top down, very top down. Mm-hmm. And that's not my style of leadership. And so when I was approached to write the book, that's the focus that I took on my leadership and my journey, is to say that you don't have to be that kind of ferocious top-down leader, that we can lead and be graceful and have build a team and support learners and do it in another kind of way, and be that kind of leader that grows a team, like grows I'd say a high performing team. That was what my team at the school district was called. I remember one of my colleagues, actually, she was a supervisor there. I think she was the director of curriculum and instruction. She said, I don't know what Ann does, but all I know is that every time there's an assignment, her team gets it in first and it's done well. But what I was able to do was surround myself with strong, did I have any men on my, I don't think I had any men, strong women, and they each brought something to the table that I didn't have. And that didn't threaten me, right? Because that made our team better. And so, after a while, we would get assignments, and I didn't even have to assign it to anybody. They would go to each other and say, this is what we've been asked to do. How should we approach this? You bring this skill set, literacy. What if you handled this part of it? And somebody, so they became a team within themselves. I didn't need to do that. And so I became the follower and they became the leaders. And that made my job a lot easier. So that was my definition of graceful leadership, is to build a team with expertise that I didn't necessarily have, and to allow them to lead and support them in their leadership.
Me and Kim have had the honor opportunity to facilitate serving leader cohorts with leaders across the state. And so in your book, you discuss some of the aspects of the serving leader. And so it was awesome to read it.
Yeah. Servant leadership is really very important. And again, servant leadership focuses on the bigger picture. It's the community, right? And that's what we do naturally. I think in our field, it's not about necessarily us. It's about the children and families and the folks that we're working with. Again, those direct service providers. Can be about the size of the car or the house, or any. It can be, but it should be service oriented as well, giving back.
So early in your career as a center director, you kept posters of African-American early childhood pioneers in your office. Can you name some of those pioneers and how they inspired
you? I still have that poster, and I share it when I teach. When I do teach, now I share it, because these folks are the shoulders on which I stand. And, early in my career, when I was that center director, I got that poster at an MBCDI conference early on. And as it was hanging in my office, and I'd look at it and be inspired by those folks, I never imagined that I would become their colleague, and work alongside of them. But and I still have this poster. It's not hanging up anymore, but I know exactly where it is. But some of the folks on that poster were Barbara Bowman, and a mother, I call her Mother Bernice Brunson, and her daughter Carol Brunson Day, Ed Green, who we know from NACE, Maury Sykes, Jerry Daniel. Are just some of the folks on that poster. And again, we're talking about probably like the mid 80s when I bought that poster, and when I would hang it up in my office. And again, just didn't know at that time, didn't imagine that those folks would become my peers and my colleagues. So yeah, full circle moment. And what a blessing.
And so your book echoes the sentiments of being fair, firm, and friendly. Can you describe a scenario when you had to practice these traits?
Lisa, thank you for laughing with me. But I will tell you, especially in the school district and other times, I was specifically told, not at the school district, but at one of the other centers where I came in as the new director, We've had other people come in here with their fancy ideas. We got rid of them, we'll get rid of you too. And then at the school district, because I had an early childhood background, mostly in child care centers, they didn't consider me an educator. So the folks that I was working with in the school district gave me a really hard time, because again, they didn't think that, I was an educator. They didn't deem me as an educator. And so when I became the director of early childhood and was struggling with this, especially with this one person who felt like she should have gotten that position, I was talking to my cousin. That advice came from my cousin Dot, Martha Dorsey, Dot as we call her. And she was my older cousin, who at 62 got her PhD. And I was talking to her one day and she said, "Ann, be firm, be fair, and friendly." And she just advised me that be fair, treat everybody equitably. You have this team, treat them equitably, bring everybody to the table, be fair. And then she said, but you've also got to be firm. And if you ask for something, they need to be responsive and you need to hold them accountable. And then she said to me, and you can't be friends with, you can't be friends with everybody, but you can be friendly. And so her advice did me well. And I used to have this sticky note in my office at that time that said fair, firm, and friendly. And it kept me focused. She also, for those of us that are religious in our beliefs, she also told, you've got the strength of a mustard seed. And so on another sticky note, I had this little dot right in the middle, and it symbolized that mustard seed for me. And so fair, firm, and friendly was the advice from my dear cousin. And it has served me well.
And it's one that is going in my toolbox as well. So thank you, Cousin Dot. So lastly, we're going through some unprecedented times in the early childhood field. And so I love that at the back of your book, there's your vision board. And so I was very encouraged by some of the quotes on there. And so a quote on your vision board is to enjoy the journey. So what can you say to encourage the early childhood professionals on this call? Yes. How do they do this in spite of staffing shortages, lack of funding, and overall not feeling respected by the community and our government?
It's tough, right? It's really tough. Yesterday evening, there was a webinar, and I know that there were folks from Ohio on the webinar I saw as people were signing in. Now, I don't know if any of those folks are on this call, but it was about the road ahead, a conversation among childcare and early childhood providers. And it gave the participants the opportunity to talk about what they were feeling, and some of the words that came up were, tired and frustrated and sad and, defeated. But also at that same time, there were folks that said proud and energized. And so I think that what we've got to do is do what you all have done here, and that is create community. We've got to learn to lean on each other, to go to each other for support and for assistance, and maybe even be able to cry to each other, because this is a really very hard time for us. And I think the first thing we have to do is acknowledge that, doggone it, I'm upset that that federal legislation passed and didn't include childcare. We were so hopeful and we worked so very hard. And the fact that it went through and it passed and it didn't include that early childhood package, it was disheartening, right? Because because we did work so hard. So again, I think that what you all are doing by creating community and giving us the opportunity to lean to each other, to learn from each other, to voice our frustrations, but also to look ahead. What's next for us? Okay, so how do we pull our pants up, right, and put our big girl panties on, and how do we move forward? How do we keep the energy that sustained us so far through this? How do we keep our eyes on the prize? How do we keep that vision going? And how do we, continue to bring people along, people that not the usual suspects, right? People who, for the first time, are seeing us as essential to the community's economic well-being, that are seeing us as essential to the workforce. How do we keep them engaged? But at the same time, how do we take care of ourselves? And maybe that's part of it. Because this is a caring community, right? And a caring field. And quite often we give and we give and we give. And so how do we take care of ourselves so that we can keep going and enjoy when maybe you can't enjoy the whole journey, but how do we find those nuggets of satisfaction? That parent that comes to you and says, thank you. The staff member that, says, because of you, I can now move forward. Finding those lights within this journey, and hold on to those and make those little nuggets of light, those that we can count on and can look back on and enjoy. It's hard. I'm not going to deny that, because I will tell you, I sat here probably by myself and just said, we can't wait another 50 years. That first legislation that Reagan vetoed was a year after I entered this field. We can't wait another 50 years. And I'm the first one to acknowledge that. But how do we move forward?
Well, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm really inspired. I was inspired by your book. This is from my heart. This is not a vendor presentation, but this book, you can see, was definitely awesome. I have it highlighted throughout, many quotes, and things from your experience have inspired me, and also shared with some of your experiences as well.